Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Combs' The Reckoning documentary has everybody talking. Are they trying to hem Diddy up? A rerun of the murder rap and talking about all of that. They've been watching a lot of all the dialogue videos and Vlad TV videos to come up with their story. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't been live in a while. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. First, we're going to give some shout outs in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Block Ice is in the building. B-Dot is in the building. Ma Dizzle is in the building. Fatima is in the building. Who's that? Ursula Uvel is in the building. Mrs. B4Q is in the building. Who's that? B. Dot, North Carolina? Shout out to North Carolina. And everybody who I have not seen in a while, ladies and gentlemen. Man, if you have not checked out the documentary on Netflix, you need to. I checked out the documentary and I found some interesting information out. That I won't be talking about right now, but you probably be hearing about soon if they don't get it right. Like I said, once again, I appreciate everybody coming up in the chat. Who else up in here? Five, Just, Blaze. Who is that? Who's that? Laughter Money. Who's that? Earner, Charge, Deshaun, Marshall. Who else? Kiana, what's happening? Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys, right? So let's get into this, man. So if you haven't seen the documentary on Netflix, I recommend you watch it. But more importantly, this is what I understand it to be, and you guys can chime in. And like I said, whatever questions you want to add, Anthony Pleasance, what's good? Who is that? Edmund, was that Tara Edmund? If I'm butchering your name, forgive me. But ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys stopping in. Your boy Delray, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. First off, I'm gonna say this. The documentary is very interesting, but I don't know if you understand, like I understand, if you've seen the documentary, there's somebody trying to hem Keefe D up. Or better yet, Keefe D hemmed himself up. Ladies and gentlemen, if you watch murder rap, for the newer generation who don't know anything about murder rap, and you watch the documentary, and you've seen it from the perspective of just what it was, you had people on there saying that are linking Diddy to dealing with the with LA gangs and all of these other things that they basically came out and said. But the most explosive part to me was the part when they dealt about Tupac and the murder of Tupac Shakur. They went through it all basically from top to bottom, starting off with the situation with Jake in Atlanta and how that basically bled into the situation, Tupac being in jail, and the guy Mark Curry who was signed to Bad Boy at one time, talked about, and which I had never really heard him say, when Suge's homeboy Jake got shot. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know, they said that, he held on and the dude was shooting one way and somehow, Suge was standing right there. And I didn't know Suge grabbed Diddy, right? And used him, not, I wouldn't say as a shield, but basically stopped him from getting shot and placing Diddy in front of him. He said, Mark Curry said that Suge placed Diddy in the chokehold when the dude was shooting so that the guy couldn't shoot him. I found that to be very interesting, and I'll tell you why. When you think about that, and then you go all the way back and you can see the tension, you can really follow along and see what the buildup was as far as the East and the West Coast thing. Like I said, the Tupac situation, in Tupac, I think Tupac and Suge at that particular time, if you could look at it from this perspective, they found, I would say, comfort in each other. Tupac had been shot at Quad. Suge dealt with the situation in Atlanta. When it came time for Tupac and Suge to see eye to eye, and him going in to try to get him out of prison, Tupac saw that for what it was. Like I said, I just did the interview with C.O. Blaze, who goes by the pen name of Michael Christopher. But he was the CO up at Clinton Correctional Facility and talked about when Suge came in. And it was one part in the interview over on Art of Dialogue. You got to check that out, where he talked about Tupac signing the contract and all of that with the death row situation and how happy Tupac was. And Tupac was like, I don't care, who get me out of here as long as I get out of here. I think he just wanted to get out of prison. That has been duly noted by a couple of people, namely Tupac himself, but confirmed by Michael Christopher, or should I say C.O. Blaze, the guy who Tupac mentioned by name. Like I said, you got to go check out the interview over there on the Art of Dialogue that I did with him. C.O. Blaze, Tupac mentioned his name in the interview that he did with Chuck Phillips on, this was October 19th. See, listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna bring you up to speed. So when people have been talking, like I told you, the night that I seen Tupac, we were at the Hollywood Athletic Club, right? That was on October 18th, 1995, right? So the very next day, and that was the night that he met Faith Evans. See, this is how I put it together, and I remember what night it was. Like I said, it was a Wednesday night, if I'm not mistaken. Every Wednesday night at the Hollywood Athletic Club. Now, October 18th, right, 1995. The next day, Tupac would be in the studio with Faith Evans, right, which was October 19th. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go listen to the interview with Chuck Phillips and Tupac, and he's actually making All Eyes on Me, you'll hear Tupac talking to Faith while she's in the booth, because all of this is covered in the documentary about Tupac saying that he had sex with Faith Evans. Is the reason why I'm talking about this. But I'm trying to give you some context into what this really is and what it meant to the picture that was kind of painted in this documentary, if you will. And so October 18th, we at the Hollywood Athletic Club. October 19th, Tupac's back at the studio working on All Eyes on Me. And Faith Evans is down there recording You Wonder Why They Call You Bitch, right? This is how I know. In that same interview, right, which I didn't even bother to listen to. I listened to the whole interview, but it didn't dawn on me when Chuck Phillips was asking him about, how was he treated in jail and all of those things, and he mentioned C.O. Blaze. It would be some 10 years later that I would finally, on the Art of Dialogue, conduct an interview with the very C.O. Blaze, right? Going under the pen name of Michael Christopher. Like I said, if you have not gotten his book, you need to check the book out, Tupac Behind Bars. Like I said, there was a lot of information in the book once I read it that I did not know about. So now, I take you there to bring you here. The documentary. the documentary showing P. Diddy Combs The Reckoning. They really went heavy with the accusation that Keefe D made once again. Murder rap was a few years ago. So let's understand what just happened. It was a few years ago. For all of the people who don't know and did not know how it went down, as far as them catching Keefe D up, being involved in the drug ring, basically getting him to confess, coming out saying basically to Greg Kading and the U.S. Attorney's Office, if you don't bullshit me, I won't bullshit y'all, and then began to spill his guts in regards to the murder of Tupac Shakur, y'all. Listen to me, it's unprecedented. For all of the people, like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't dislike Greg Kading. You know, Greg Kading was a police officer. Greg Kading was doing his job. You know, people can be mad all they want. Like I said, you know, my thing is, if you a gangster and you get caught up, you know, you keep your mouth shut and you do what you got to do and accept the responsibility for your actions. That's normally how the game was played, right? But in Keefe D's situation, I guess for whatever he was facing and for whatever reason he thought he should, Keefe D began to cooperate with the government. And that wasn't the first time involving the murder of Tupac Shakur. Now you'll hear some people say, well, yeah, Keefe D, you know, he lied earlier and told him in 1998 that Suge Knight was responsible and they killed Tupac because Tupac was trying to leave death row, right? We brung the paperwork out. Listen, I want you to understand this. We brung the paperwork out over on the Art of Dialogue, basically dispelling that myth and that lie. How? When you understand, for all the people that were saying that Suge Knight has something to do with the death of Tupac Shakur, when you understand that Tupac actually wasn't signed to death row, when you got the real paperwork, right, you would know that there was no motive for Suge Knight to do anything like that. You get it? So everything that everybody was saying about the situation, they were saying it based on false and misleading information in which they thought was true at that particular time, right? When you see the paperwork, you see the bail agreement, you see Warner Brothers and Interscope put up a basically a corporate bond and like $300,000 to get him out. Like I said, you take nothing away from Suge, because if it wasn't for Suge having death row, it wouldn't have been possible, because Suge was the catalyst that made the ball roll so that they can continue getting their money back, or even more money, with Tupac now masquerading as an artist under death row, right? So for the people who were thinking that, you can now understand that it simply wasn't so. But this is the crazy part. So now you get into the documentary, and then when I seen Greg Kading sit down, I was like, uh-oh. They're about to rehash it. And they did. They went through everything. They went through the whole testimony. You know, Keefe D basically saying, hey, this is what it was. This is what we did. This is how it happened. You know, and that the case, you got to understand, when murder rap came out, there was nobody arrested for the murder of Tupac Shakur at that particular time. But this right here changes things. And it was one thing that Greg Kading said in the documentary. Greg Kading said, well, we were waiting to see what Las Vegas was going to do in reference to the testimony of Keefe D involving Sean P. Diddy Combs. What that tells me is there's a possibility. I won't say how strong, because I don't know, but there's a possibility, what it sounded like to me, that they were truly, honestly trying to implicate Sean P. Diddy Combs heavily for the hit on Tupac Shakur, ladies and gentlemen. This was something that for most people who didn't know about anything about this, that are now going to watch it, because I would say 50's an executive producer, you know what I mean, in the situation and all of the press that they had been doing up until this point, right? This is what I got from that situation involving that. We had just lived the Cassie thing, so we kind of understood what that was. But yeah, it's then got real smoky, man. It's got real smoky. And like I said, once again, you cannot, like I said, they talked about Green Blatz. And I'm going to talk about Green Blatz, and the reason why is they said, well, they don't have to. Ladies and gentlemen, Keefe D implicated the fact that Corey Edwards, who was also in Vegas, right, by his own testimony in regards to what happened that night, Greg Kadingham had got to Corey Edwards based on some other charge that he was facing and got him to testify who was there, when they were there, and all of these other things. But more importantly, this is the thing that I found most interesting that I've been really trying to give y'all for these last couple of years, is that Keefe D implicated Corey Edwards in being at Green Blatz. Green Blatz was next to the Laugh Factory in Hollywood. It was a deli shop. It was like a restaurant. And this is where Keefe D said the meeting happened, in which he would then be accepting the situation involving the hit on Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight. This was supposedly shortly after Tupac did hit him up, right? So now you go into the situation, and I see, in watching the documentary, I see you go into the situation with Jake, right? And Suge feeling the way he felt about that situation. Then you go into the situation with Tupac. Then you go into the situation with Hit 'Em Up, all of the things that were said. But then you go into Green Blatz when the meeting takes place, and then you can understand motive. You can understand why Diddy felt the way he felt, why he was kind of scared, why he was kind of moving like he was moving. And from what I understand from the documentary, why he needed the protection that he needed when he came to the West Coast. It was a dangerous time, but understanding what that was, because if you, like I'll say, if you go back to 1996, most people didn't know about, or 1995, most people didn't know about the Jake situation. You had to be close to the streets to really know about that. You know what I mean? That wasn't widely publicized like, a lot of things get publicized now, every social media. It wasn't that, because it wasn't really so much so music related. It was a personal situation, right? At that particular time, Tupac was not yet on death row, right? Okay, Suge would then spring Tupac a little bit later. So now you understand the environment that created the situation, and it was like, oh, okay. Now, in relation to that, Suge Knight did an interview on the Art of Dialogue a couple of weeks back. And for the people who don't know, and this is the part where when people say, well, Suge lying, Suge this, I just want you to understand. So Suge does the interview on the Art of Dialogue, and Art asks him, he said something about in reference to people saying about the murder of Tupac and about what Keefe D said and all of these things. And Suge started off the interview by saying, well, since it's been spoken on already, right? Listen, since it's been spoken on, now I can speak on it. Remember, Suge always held it tight to his vest and said, I ain't telling, I ain't snitching. They even play that in the documentary where he said, I don't work for the police and I don't tell and I don't do this. But like I said, since Keefe D had came out and talked and basically implicated himself, Suge felt free to talk now, because it wasn't like he was going to tell on anybody or say anything that wasn't already said against Keefe D, basically incriminating himself, right? Listen. So Suge Knight goes into telling the story. And I want you to pay attention to this, because if you haven't seen the interview, like I said, it's over on Art of Dialogue. The Michael Christopher interview, the Suge Knight interview. So Suge goes on and he explains, in which Keefe D had already talked about on Vlad, but nobody really paid attention to it when he said it on Vlad, because Suge was being quiet, so it wasn't corroborated yet, right? So now, once it happened on Vlad, Didn't pay attention. All the dialogue, okay, here comes the corroboration. So Suge goes into the story, yeah, I ran into Keefe D at the Staples Center. Oh, wow. Really? Yeah. We were at the Staples Center. I was with some girls. You know, I was doing this, and then I had to go to the bathroom. He said he goes to the bathroom, and he sees who? Keefe D. Suge said he just got out of prison. I believe Keefe D just got out of prison around about the same time. Right? So he said the first thing that Keefe D told him was, anything, the situation with Buntry, I didn't have nothing to do with that, blah, blah, blah. And then Suge spoke on what he felt about that, talking about, well, if I thought you did, I'd be at you already, and so on and so forth. But then Keefe D began to tell Suge about the Tupac situation. And Suge says, confirming what Keefe D says, but Keefe D didn't go into much detail, but confirm who the Lakers were playing, the New Jersey Nets that night, right? That they had talked and all of that, right? But Suge went into detail and basically said that Keefe D told him that the situation in Las Vegas involved money and him supposed to be getting paid for basically the hit on Tupac and Suge. Basically, that's what Suge said Keefe D told him. Now, the reason why I believe that is because simply Keefe D would come out later and basically confess to Greg Kading, which we saw in the documentary. Can you see that now? You can take those two things and say, well, Suge, and like I said, this is after the fact. Suge just came out recently and spoke on the Art of Dialogue when he said that. Keefe D was on Vlad when he said that. I made a video and I put both of those together, and you could hear as to corroborate what that was about, adding context to what that situation and what was being talked about, right? So Suge Knight says to Keefe D, well, I gotta go piss. Come on, go in the bathroom. He said to Keefe D, he said, man, I ain't going to no bathroom with you, right? Because Suge said he wanted to whatever, or he was feeling whatever, and so it didn't happen. But when you understand that was the first time Suge Knight ever spoke on that meeting with him and Keefe D at the Laker game. Most people saying, well, why didn't he do nothing if he loved Pac like that? He said the man said he just got out of jail. He went afoul in Vegas and got caught up and got the 9 years, right? I mean, only a fool would try to do something to Keefe D in the, at the Laker game. It's 30,000, 20,000 people, using some common sense. But the fact that Suge Knight spoke on that, and like I said, the way the conversation started off, he's saying, well, since everybody spoke on it, now I can speak on it. And he talked about that night. Now, Suge Knight also mentioned, which was very important, that Tupac, the fight in Vegas, almost messed up the situation involving the actual hit that was on them, right? On Tupac and Suge when Tupac ran up on Orlando. And if you can understand, so if there was a plan to do something, there was something else that happened, when Tupac was allegedly told that or overheard or whatever you want to call it, that's the guy over there that tried to take my chain, and Tupac ran over there and did what he did. Not even knowing that there was a situation. Now, Kirk Burroughs, this is where he comes in. So Kirk Burroughs then comes in on this Netflix documentary and basically testifies that he believes that Sean P. Diddy Combs was responsible for the death of This is a guy who worked closely with Sean P. Diddy Combs. No, not only that, Kirk Burroughs said Diddy told me to rent some cars on the night of that fight that would be driven from Harlem, New York, all the way to Las Vegas. Right? Where did Keefe D say he got the gun from? He said he got it from Zip. Was Zip in Vegas that night? According to Keefe D. Who was in the car with Zip? Foxy Brown, according to Keefe D. But you ain't got to take my word for it. You hear Keefe D talk about each and every instance of his part involving the murder of Tupac Shakur, ladies and gentlemen. But here's the kicker. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. You see, when we talk about what Suge Knight and Keefe D talked about at the Staples Center, we cannot overlook the fact that one of the last things that Suge Knight said that Keefe D told him is that security was involved. Security was involved with the plot and with the setup in the assassination of Tupac Shakur. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to stop and think about that for a minute. Because Keefe D went on ABC News and said it out of his own mouth, right? That the orchestrator in the murder of Tupac Shakur was none other than Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. He said this on ABC News. This was before Suge came on the Art of Dialogue and talked about what him and Keefe D talked about at the Staples Center. But Suge mentioned that. That was the first time Suge had ever mentioned anything about that conversation. So what that tells me is that Suge knew or had some knowledge about the situation involving Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. being involved, according to what Keefe D told him. But that's just not it. Hold on. So now, the Gotham, the Frank Alexander having the lie about Orlando trying to snatch Tupac's chain, the Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lying about the Nextel radio, all of those things coming out, lying about the fact that he said that he went to the hospital and Suge Knight told him who was allegedly involved with the situation. That's 4 lies, right? Also, lying about his father, and when he found out about the situation, he actually lied to Gullible John. That's 5 lies, ladies and gentlemen. But here Keefe D is in prison. And so think about it for a minute. What happens a couple of weeks before Tupac is shot in Vegas? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. had been denying this for years until Yasmin Fula, Yaki Gaddafi's mom, finally released that fax that Tupac Shakur fired Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. Why? Why did he fire him, y'all? Because Tupac wanted his music and Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. security would not give it to him. And basically they said that David Kenner wouldn't allow it, and so on and so forth, right? Tupac then immediately fired Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. security and David Kenner as his attorney. So now, you go to Vegas. The security is pulled off of Tupac. That's without a doubt. Right? The guy Tim, who worked for Death Row Security, said it. Michael Moore said it. Frank Alexander said it. You have to understand, these are people who were actually working for Death Row that had no skin in the game as far as what they were talking about and the truth that they were mentioning, right? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. then would go on to lie and lie again. So much so that Frank Alexander was on it so tough about the lies. What did he do? He recorded Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. being caught in a lie, telling Frank on one end, or saying it publicly, I just wanted Frank to go and testify and say what he saw happen, right? This is what he was peddling in front of everybody. But behind the scenes, when Frank recorded Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., what did he catch him saying? Frank, if you can avoid the subpoena, then everything should be cool, right? Michael Moore told Frank Alexander that they wanted him dead, right? This is all on tape, in which Frank Alexander recorded. That's why Reggie the Wright Jr. has been so hard on Frank, may he rest in peace, because Frank simply told the truth involving the situation. Then let's go over to Suge Knight's house shortly after Tupac got shot. What did Suge say? I called and I told him we need 5 more security guards for Tupac. But they sent nobody. And Reggie, what? This is what Suge say. Reggie pulled the security off of him. It didn't have to happen like that, but Reggie pulled them off of him. Get it? So if Suge Knight was saying that and he understood that, then when he talked to Keefe D at the Laker game, and Keefe D now tells him like, hey, yo, security was involved. I'm gonna tell you what happened. This is what happened with the situation with the Tupac situation, and this he was like, and he implicated Diddy to Suge at the game. You get it? Shit is crazy, man. Shit is crazy. But when you listen and you go look at the documentary and you hear once again, if you're hearing it for the first time in regards, because like I said, once again, you're talking about the jury pool. You know what I mean? We talking about members of the jury. This is going to get around. You talking about the jury pool. You talking about public opinion. You talking about all of this. When you listen to the Greg Kading and the U.S. attorneys and them having Keefe D on tape confessing to being involved in the murder of Tupac, implicating Sean P. Diddy Combs, it's a scary. If I'm Diddy, I'd be scared right now. I mean, I guess no more scared than he can be. You know, he had 4 dicks, right? You know what I mean? You know, he ain't at no maximum security penitentiary. But, you know, yeah. Because how they're painting the picture is that if the feds pick it up, or whoever might pick this up and try to say, and Keefe D say, hey, but the problem with that would be the corroboration more so than anything. But it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And sometimes circumstantial situations get a guilty verdict in that sense, right? And so it would depend on Keefe D. But I say that to say, if you're listening to this information for the first time, it's chilling, man. It's chilling. It's chilling. It's chilling. And then you also get, if you want to be perfectly honest and realistic, Tupac shouldn't have attacked Orlando Anderson. Like I said, I did the interview with Tupac's father, and that was one of the questions that I asked him, because like I said, I just wanted to be candid and honest about what I was talking and the questions that I was asking and where I was coming from. And I asked Billy Garland, I said, you think Tupac was wrong for attacking Orlando Anderson? And his father said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I don't know what he was thinking, you know, Pac trying to be loyal and blase blah, right? But he was honest, and he had to be honest about that, right? So one thing led to another. I understand all of the whole picture. But this documentary basically relives murder rap, if you will. Kind of relives the Diddy trial, if you will, in regards to, you know, Cassie and, you know, the freak offs and all of those things. I thought the part about Tupac was the most powerful. I thought that was the most powerful part about the documentary, because once again, you rarely hear somebody confess like that to a murder in Keefe D. Confess to that and being involved and basically saying, I told y'all before, if you don't bullshit me, I won't bullshit y'all. You know? And then begin to explain, you know, moment by moment, word for word, what they did, what happened, and all of that. And then you go to Vlad, and then you go to Art of Dialogue, and you listen to the videos that they got with him confessing and saying all of the things. Like I said, once again, when the situation happened in court recently with the new lawyers and all of that, you know, they played that part from the Vlad video, if you will, and him basically holding up the book saying, this is the truth. It's chilling, man. It's chilling. It's chilling. So I don't know what they're going to do. Like I said, Keefe D now has new lawyers. The trial has been pushed out to August. You know what I mean? We in December. We be January before you know it. Before you know it, it'll be summertime. So it's going to be hot in Vegas, ladies and gentlemen. in regards to this situation. Diddy came out and Diddy basically was saying that he thought it was a hit piece. I wouldn't say that it was a hit piece from that perspective, but then again, when you think about the Tupac part, right? If it wasn't fresh on your mind, you have a different look at him, right? You also think about him being in prison and how the prisoners look at him who might be Tupac fans or who might be whatever, you know what I mean? You know, looking at him like, now, like, damn, you know, dude came out and he told and X, Y, and Z. And, you know, like I said, people play whatever part of it's going to benefit them. So I think about it universally, not just from the perspective that I think, but everybody, you know, that might be hearing this and listening to it. We've seen, you know, they got phones and stuff, you know, in the jail evidently. Well, at least the guards do. Then TMZ coming out with these, you know, these alleged photos. Some of them are fake, you know what I mean? Which we know the AI ones with the little boy and all of that hanging on his arm and all of that. You know, I think that kind of I wouldn't even say it muddies the waters. It's like people want people to be involved in things or be something that they not just because they want them to be it. And now that AI has come out, it kind of makes people think that way. It's like, oh, y'all see the pictures of Diddy with the boy on his arm and all that. Like, you know, we know for a fact from what we heard during the trial that that's not Diddy's MO. We know that for a fact based on the fact that the young men who was over on the Art Dialogue talking about, was Diddy gay? Was he involved in anything like that? Did he want y'all to do anything to him like that? And they were basically like, no. You know what I mean? So now that this AI thing comes out and people want to see things and they put it in the masses, you got to be able, so should I say, you got to be careful about the information that you digest in regards to stuff like that. You know? Then you hear about the situation with 50 Cent and him being executive producer. Like I said, I look at it from this perspective. We saw what happened during the trial. There's nothing you could tell us in regards to that. But for the people who did not know, and I'll say it again, who did not know about the Tupac situation involving Keefe D, you know, they were floored. It was like they painted it from, you know, the Jake situation to the Faith situation, and you know, they license hit them up. You know, they did a lot of, you know, painting of a picture. And that picture is very vivid, and it's very, it seems to me, it's accurate. Like I said, from the testimony that was given by Keefe D to the United States Attorney. Also, Keefe D talked to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department shortly after that, right? And most people, I had somebody say to me the other day in the comment, they were like, you know, how do you know that the reason why Keefe D talked to the police, it wasn't about what I think I know. Based on the fact that Las Vegas was respecting the deal that Keefe D, listen, when they asked to speak to Keefe D, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department basically assured the United States Attorney, you can almost be sure of this, that Keefe D wouldn't be arrested, right? But they just wanted to talk to him, to hear him say to them, to Las Vegas, after he got his, you know, somewhat proffer deal, they wanted to hear him say it themselves. Las Vegas did. So Keefe D volunteered to go talk to Las Vegas. They agreed at the time not to arrest him. That's why nothing never happened, y'all. Most people, why it took him to some? It was an agreement. This is just how the law works. That's why, you know, they say you can bend it, but don't break it. Because people don't play fair. You see it every day. Dudes snitching, dudes telling, and all of that, right? So Keefe D decides to go to talk to Las Vegas. And as a matter of fact, from what I heard, Keefe D admitted a little bit more to Las Vegas than he did to Greg Cady now. He talked about where they put the gun at. And all of that, like I said, people have yet to hear that information, but it's going to come out in court. You see what I'm saying? So when they ask that question, that's why. Because they always say, well, why it took them 20 years? There ain't no statute of limitations on murder. You know, people are so self-absorbed when they think like, oh, so what you think, the police got to work on your timeline? Cause you think it, that's the timeline they have to work on is what you thinking. It don't work like that. They do whatever they want when they want, right? And that's the thing that why most people can't win, like I said, in committing a crime, because statute of limitations on murder, there is none. You can be 80 years old and they find out and they get some evidence, they coming to get you at 80. And you might die in the penitentiary. Oh well, you know what I mean? That's how they feel about it. We got him. Case closed. You know? And so with this documentary, you know, when you say The Reckoning, and the title The Reckoning, and you think about some of the things that, you know, people were saying that happened to them from Diddy because he had the power, he had the money. I will say that it is some semblance of a reckoning, you know, when you do so much stuff, like even if he never gets caught for the Tupac situation or get hemmed up or charged in the Tupac murder, right? He know what part he played, right? He know whether he was at Green Blatz or not. He know whether he had that conversation with Keefe D involving Suge Knight and Tupac or not, right? And God knows too. You see? So all of those things, just like what Cassie said when she, you know, about in the civil case about when they got the guns and went to Jerry's Deli in West LA, you know, looking for Suge, right? Once again, why would she lie about something like that? You know, but at one time, everybody was on the team, right? Everybody was eating, everybody was driving, everybody had money, you know what I mean? The VIP and the parties and all of that, right? When that dried up, you seen the vultures come out, man. Over 100 alleged cases. But the funny thing, let me tell you something about this. The funny thing that I didn't see, and this is the part that's a little bit disingenuous, is the fact that, remember, and we talked about this, when Jay-Z was involved with the case involving the young girl, the alleged young girl, and they tried to bring Diddy and Jay-Z in the case, I think they should have talked about that, right? See, you can once again, the Cassie situation, the hotel situation, him being violent toward, all of those things are true in fact, right? You know, they was talking about the shooting situation. The dude, Lil Rod, was talking about the shooting situation in that bathroom, right? From what he's saying, okay, all of those things are true in fact. But they didn't talk about that situation with alleged Jay-Z and Diddy had something to do with that. And that's one of the situations I felt like they should have talked about, because that was a lie. That was one of those piling ons that seemed like it was so legit, that seemed like it was so true, that everybody was like, you don't know what them celebrities be doing. You just, nothing. Not what they was trying to explain that to us that Jay-Z was doing with Diddy, because it didn't happen. Point blank, it didn't happen. So anybody that was saying anything about that, remember when it went away, and Jay-Z is still suing in defamation for that situation. You got to understand the man got kids. You know, you can hate somebody because they rich, got money and all of that, but the man got kids. And to say that he would be involved with something like that, his kids got to go to school, and it's so unbecoming, and it's all over the news. It's a whole nother world. But some people might not care because they broke and they feel like, well, you know, that's what he get. How? That ain't what nobody get. You don't deserve to be falsely accused of something that you had nothing to do with, that you was nowhere. Not that you didn't have nothing to do with. It didn't happen. And somebody thought that they could possibly get you for some money. And they had to dismiss the case. And they had to dismiss the case against Diddy. I thought they should have talked about that. But they didn't. So, you know, like I said, people speak from whatever perspective that they want to speak from, but it's up to you to be able to discern, or have a discerning enough eye to understand not just what they're saying, but what they're not saying. You see what I'm saying? Over 77 cases. Nah, from what I understand, Diddy didn't drug nobody. From what I got, I'm like, everybody that was around them was taking the drugs. Even Little Rod said in the documentary that we was all taking the drugs, right? And then they said it was drug. Like, come on, you know. the most interesting thing was the Indian guy. It was an Indian guy who was a juror. And they asked him, did he think that Cassie was at fault? And he basically said, yeah, because, you either gonna leave and not be there no more to go through all of this, or you're gonna stay. And you can't have it both ways. He said, because it was 1 minute they were fighting, then she come back and they going on trips and they going to the Met Gala and they doing all of these things. And the next minute they fighting again and then they doing this and then you know what I mean? So if it was all of what that was, and people keep trying to offer these I don't need you to offer no justification for nobody, no grown ass person's behavior, right? Listen to me, and I'm gonna say this: if the ties that bind you together are stronger than those that'll tear you apart, then you're gonna stay, right? But when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're gonna leave. And Cassie left when she left, albeit with Diddy's personal trainer, who she's married to now and got kids by, but she left when she felt like she should. It's just as simple as that. Even after the hotel incident, she stayed. I won't offer her no justification as to why. Only she knows why. But when she left, it was like, okay, cool. She waited a while, and then she came with the lawsuit. Like, I'm going to reveal everything. And the cold part about it is, it was like they were trying to and I think this is where ego comes in for Diddy, and where his ego kind of got the best of him in a lot of ways. He was telling his sons in the documentary, he was like, God telling me I can't do nothing, but what y'all gonna do? And I was like, what the hell he mean? These are kids. What you mean what they gonna do? You know what I mean? What you mean what they gonna do? Once again, him not being able to accept the accountability for his behavior, and still at the time when they come to get him, they find dope in the room, they find pills, ketamine, all that shit. I'm like, dude, you look out the window in the documentary, you look across the street, they was watching him. They was on top of the building, on the roof, on the top of the building, watching him to go out and come back in and all of those things. I'm like, you know what I mean? The last thing, so when he said that, I really didn't understand that. I was like, wow, who is this guy? Or who does he think he is? Right? And so we see. But like I said, I wanted to come and talk about the documentary, man. Like I said, I appreciate everybody in the house tonight, man. You said, who said, Funky? Y'all ask questions, man. I want to see what y'all thinking, man. No, Diddy. When did Diddy didn't have no felony doing the club shooting? He was found not guilty. Ma Dizzle, he was found not guilty. It's a yacht description of what it was, but light skin. Like I said, once again, I'm not even, like I said, once again, you can go outside of the car. You can, like I said, believe what, like I said, Yaki said, and I'm listening, once again, go listen to what Keefe D said on that tape. Most people want to say, well, Greg Kading told him what to say. Well, if Greg Kading told Keefe D what to say, then what does that make Keefe D? You can't take up for somebody who can't take up for themselves. It's just that simple, ladies and gentlemen. You can't offer an excuse for somebody who's not trying to do something for themselves. Keefe D confessed. Point blank, period. You can take it or you can leave it. You can want who you want to have done something in the situation or not. Like I said, you can do that. Jersey Rick, thank you. I appreciate that. We said sorry, but I think somebody say sorry, but I think No Joke got it right. But also Suge already said someone from Death Row did it and sent the hit. Suge said it in the Art of Dialogue. Yeah, Suge said a lot of things. Like I said, once again, but when somebody tells me that they know and they say it, like I said, once again, Keefe D admitted to it. And like I say, I don't know nobody. You can, like I said, you can give me some government conspiracy shit. You can tell me whatever you want. Keefe D sat down and spilled his guts about that situation, not only to the U.S. Attorney, but also to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, y'all. You're not gonna get no argument from me about what another man said that he did involving in somebody's murder and a high-profile murder of Tupac Shakur. You can't get no argument out of me. You can tell me what you think. Cool. Like I said, but I'm not telling you what I think. All you gotta do is go listen to what Keefe D said. And you can take it or you can leave it. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Deserving more in the building. What's good? Like I said, yeah, a lot of people talk about it, but once again, you can talk about it, but you can't overtalk somebody who's implicated themselves in the murder, who is now locked up in jail waiting to be tried in that murder. You can't outtalk that. You can't give me any other conspiracy theories or thought patterns or somebody told me something. You can't give me that. If, like I said, for the people who are just getting up on it, you go watch the documentary and you're going to see and you're going to hear Keefe D go through everything that happened involving the setup and the alleged hire by Sean P. Diddy Combs to murder Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight, ladies and gentlemen. You can, like I said once again, you can believe Joke No Joke, you can believe Discretion TV, you can believe anybody you want. I'm not knocking them, right? Everybody has a narrative that they're kicking. I'm not telling you nothing. All I'm telling you is, or suggesting that you do, is just go listen to what Keefe D said. For people who didn't hear, you heard like parts of it. For the people who know, go listen to it in its entirety and watch it on Netflix, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you'll get the gist of it. You'll say, okay, I kind of get it. Because they lay it out from the Jake part all the way up into the situation with Biggie's murder. Right? And then they talk about how, Diddy was supposed to pay for Biggie's funeral, but then charged it off to Biggie, like it was an expense on Biggie's part. And the cold part about it is, I wouldn't say the same thing happened in Tupac's case, but it was similar. I believe that Interscope paid for Tupac's memorial service, if you will, from that perspective. So it wasn't similar, right? Yeah, like I said, that's true. Timestamp Tiffany say what? The fact remains that so many lives were lost and still Pac and Big are gone and their murders are unsolved. Absolutely. But like I said, when you talk about the Biggie situation, like I said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. Ask him about his proffer deal, y'all. Like I said, he came out and he started to talk about it. Ask him how he got a proffer deal, right? Ask him about the bankruptcy and how they squeeze him on the bankruptcy and got him, and he wanted to go in and talk about the situation involving the murder of Notorious B.I.G. I showed y'all the paperwork, right? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. came out and said what? What'd he say? If y'all was Tupac fans, then y'all should be happy if I had something to do with the murder of Biggie. No, nobody should. No, nobody shouldn't. He's looking for hero status. One minute he says that, and then the next minute he runs over to the grand jury in Keefe D case talking about, I'm just giving them the climate of what was going on. Then try to control the narrative as to what happened. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said he was at Club 662. But Keefe D testified in 2009 to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, ladies and gentlemen, that he saw Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. in the entourage of cars. Like I said, I don't know. This is what they saying. I'm just reporting on it. I'm just giving you this straight game. Point blank, period. So you see what I'm saying? I'm talking about what's documented. I ain't talking about what I'm feeling. I ain't talking about what I'm thinking. I ain't talking about what somebody told me. Keefe D, in the 2009 interview with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, said that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was in the entourage of cars, that he saw him in the entourage of cars, right? Right before the shooting happened. And everybody's been trying to figure out, because Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lied to Gullible John on Bum's First and told him that when Gullible John asked him, well, how soon did you find out what happened and who did what to who, right? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lied about 7 years ago and told Gullible John, oh, it was about 2 or 3 days. But I showed you the video once again proving that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is a compulsive liar in saying that what? The Seaside Police Department video where his father says it. Soon after Tupac and Reggie and Suge got shot, you know, Reggie called me right afterwards. And what? And what he tell him? He told me who did it, who was involved, and that it was on its way back to Compton, and it was going, you know, so get ready. That's what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. father said that Reggie told him. But Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lied to Gullible John. That's why, like I said, once Suge Knight started speaking out, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. started to get mad because all of the lies that he had told up until that point were being exposed. Not maliciously, not facetiously, but just exposed because they were what they were. They were simply lies. You get it? So once you hear Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. speak on Tupac's name, Tupac fired him. Tupac wanted nothing to do with him. Point blank, period. And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., according to Keefe D, orchestrated and was involved in the assassination of Tupac Shakur. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. Frank Alexander talked about how he removed security. I showed you the video where Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. denied even being fired, not knowing that he admitted talking about April, right? Oh, that was in April. No, that was in August. August 27th to be exact. But he lied about that too, because he knew if you knew that it was in August that Tupac fired him, you would basically figure out that it was 11 days before Tupac was shot that Reggie was fired. Don't let them fool you with all of the slick half-ass gangster talk, man. You understand what I'm saying? Like I said, once again, when in fact, what's that? Phil Carson basically told us that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was a 137 informant. Yeah. You know, he wants to play both sides of the fence. That's the truth. That's not me. That's them basically saying it is what it is. Then you have Omar Bradley coming out just recent saying that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said that he didn't know Rafael Perez. Omar Bradley said that was a lie. That was another lie. He said, Omar Bradley said, I was there in the office. They played chess together or something like that. Got into some kind of squabble or something like that. And Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was right there. That's not me saying it. It's here on the internet. From Omar Bradley, the former mayor of Compton, California. You can take it or leave it. So this is going to get very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I guess once this soaks in, like I said, the jury pool, all of that is currently being tainted with this documentary. And I would say not tainted by a lie, but tainted by, in some ways, what is the truth, based on Keefe D's testimony, because he's in prison. Based on his own testimony, nobody else's. You see what I'm saying? You know, and like I said, the people that he's implicated, what Suge Knight had said on the Art of Dialogue, all of those things are or interwoven, if you will, into this web that has been created by the what they say, the tangle web that people weave, right? When we inspire to conceive, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that they were conceiving at that particular time, yeah, it's a tangle web we weave, where we conspire to conceive. That's what it said. We say the Ace is Wild channel. He said Big started his own label. Puff got mad when Big was writing for Junior Mob. Yeah. Like I said, once again, because Diddy had a publishing deal with Biggie. So Biggie was writing the rhymes. Biggie didn't want him to know he was writing the rhymes because that means that he would have to give Puffy a piece of those songs that he was writing for Junior Mafia. I understand the business aspect of that. Yeah, we remember Russell Poole, but like I said, once again, if you've seen the video I did on Russell Poole really didn't know what he was talking about, right? He was Suge Knight did it, and Suge Knight did it, and you know, he ultimately, I believe, before he passed away, wanted to apologize to Suge Knight in regards to that. So like I said, once again, there's been so many lies told, man. I just did a video about the life insurance policy, right? You know, people like, how you know? They like, how you know? Oh, no. It's not that I know. I gave you the documentation. Somebody was like, Tupac Shakur wasn't his real name. I'm like, well, go check his driver's license and his passport. Then you come back to me and tell me what his real name was on those, or should I say his legal names on those documents were. Once again, people just shout out shit. They don't have any kind of real, they just shout out stuff and want to be antagonists and work at the gas station. They were trying to gaslight things, right? What's up, Chad Martin? How you doing, man? Always a pleasure. Ma Dizzle in the building. The Ace is Wild channel. Say Mo Payeto. Timestamp Tiffany in the building. Who else we got up in here, man? Like I said, I appreciate each and everybody coming through in the chat. You know what I mean? And you know, like I said, may we stay tuned. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it's the first time I went live in a while, man, and I just wanted to give y'all this straight game. Now, who else got? Anybody else got any questions? Let me. What's on your mind? What do you say? Say the Frank Alexander said the shooter shot like a cop. Like I said, Mike Diggs like I said, once again, there's been a lot, you know, a lot said in regards to that. I don't know what a cop shoot like. You know what I mean? From that perspective. But I just know what Keefe D said, man. Like I said, people can take that or leave that, man. That man's sitting in jail right now for his own words and what he told the United States government and the Los Angeles Police Department, right? And they gave him a deal. The deal of a lifetime. The deal to stay out of prison if he confessed to what happened in the murder of Tupac Shakur. And he did that. But the thing that Keefe D did not pay attention to was the legal boundaries in what the proffer deal protected and what it didn't protect. And so much so that he went on various outlets, you know, doing documentaries, Vlad, the Art of Dialogue, basically speaking and bragging and at sometimes laughing about what had happened, you know, and at sometimes he seemed like he was apologetic to keep it 100. But there were some things that were not supposed to be said. And he kept saying them. And for that reason, Keefe D is sitting in prison right now, waiting to be tried in the murder of Tupac Shakur with gang enhancements. It's that serious. So like I said, you can entertain all of this other stuff you want. You know, you can go look at the FBI files and they were watching Tupac and all of that is true. Right? You know, but yeah, it is what it is. And like I said, you know, whether it was something deeper than what we understand and know it to be, you know, hopefully one day it may or may not be revealed. But like I said, you know, with this new documentary coming out, and them basically, you know, what it seems like to me, them basically running murder rap back again, if you will, for the new generation. Yeah, it's a hell of a thing. So like I said, you know, we gonna see what this is. It said, you said the rich BS controlling y'all, and you fall into the trap every time. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Yeah, Keefe D should have, like, Keefe, no, listen, not only should Keefe D had kept his mouth shut, Keefe D said it on ABC News when he was basically implicating that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was the orchestrator. He said, I should have never said nothing. Yeah. Now that, you want to kind of like want a do-over, you know what I mean? But ain't no do-overs, man. Not at this stage of the game, you know what I mean? When they gave you the deal of a lifetime. And he basically went against the grain. And now we sitting in prison waiting on, to go to trial for the murder charge. I don't believe that Diddy lined up Biggie. I don't believe that. Like I said, you can make it appear that way. But like the brother said, that, how they were moving out here in LA at that particular time was reckless. You know what I mean? And like I said, when Kurt said that Biggie was supposed to go to London, but Diddy called and said, yo, he ain't going nowhere, cancel the flight. You know what I mean? For all intents and purposes. I wouldn't call that a lineup, but I think what Kurt Burrows basically was saying, that Diddy couldn't admit that, because now it kind of seems like it implicates something that he was trying to set up. I simply just don't believe that. Like I said, once again, people said that Suge lined Tupac up. It simply was not the case. Show me the benefit. Show me the motive. Why? Tupac wasn't signed to death row. Suge would stand to benefit more with Tupac being alive and being his manager than he would Tupac being dead. Suge didn't have a life insurance policy on Tupac, So I like I said, once again, it was some, for lack of a better term, it was some gangster shit. Like I said, and for the people who understand and know that, they not gonna sit back and go with all of these theories. Like I said, Keefe D basically came out when he got caught. They showed you the pictures in the documentary, the pictures of the drugs that they bought, to squeeze him because he facing a life sentence. It's a life sentence, so you tell us what this is, boom. Yeah, I tell you what this is, y'all give me a deal. Keefe D said it in the beginning. If you don't bullshit me, I won't bullshit y'all. What more do you need? But some of y'all need more. Some of you, like I said, it's just, some people just need a little bit more, man. I just need to believe, that it was something that it wasn't. And I can understand that. And you have a right to do that. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to take you off of that. You can believe whatever you want. You can believe me in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Libya, in the south of France. You can believe Tupac is wherever you want him to be, if that makes you happy. If you like it, I love it. You say, what Ace Wild say, Pop was clowning Puff. Puff put things in motion. Money talks. Yeah, like I said, once again, it was a hell of a time. Like you listen to Hit 'Em Up and listen to everything that was said on there. And then you go listen to what, what's his name, that wrote the book, Mark Curry, said about what happened when Jake got killed, what he was saying to Puffy, when Puffy told him, everything gonna be all right. What did Suge tell Puffy when he said that? You gotta go watch the documentary. You ahead, and then you go to listen to what Tupac talked about when he did Hit 'Em Up at the end of Hit 'Em Up, and then you'll kind of get the climate of that thing ringing twice in Diddy's ear. Once from Suge when Jake was being shot, and then the other from Tupac at the end of Hit 'Em Up, and you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, wow, you know what I mean? So once again, like I said, man, I appreciate you guys. Stay tuned. Yeah, your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. remember they used to laugh.